In this video, we are going to create the ability we're going to pull our objects, our individual task objects, and we're going to put them into their own component. So we will have, instead of having all of these objects as one task component, we're going to separate them into individual task components. We're going to apply a class to them that's going to give them this strikeout, and we're going to add this little checkbox that by checking or unchecking will ensure that we can either stop highlighting, or you get the idea. It's much easier to see it than my words. I'm getting tongue-tied. All right, so let's see how that all comes into play. All right, so we have our task list, which is looping through our object of tasks, our array of objects tasks, right? And then it's printing out task title. But I think the task title is going to, like, each of those tasks are going to be a component of themselves that we can build on. And so we're going to pull out the task title from here and instead utilize a component for each of our individual items. So let's go into our project folder, and I'm going to right click on components and choose new file. I'm going to call this task view, and then task view, for simplicity on my end, you might want to put it on pause. I'm going to input in some data or paste in some data, and let's see what I'm looking at here. So I have my template. Probably need to close that out. Okay, so I have my template. I have a single root element. I have a class. Looks like I have an error somewhere, so we'll fix that. Class equals to do items, so that is my class down here. So I'm just styling my to do items. P tag is looking at an A task title. And so if I look at, looks like this is where I messed up here. So let me fix that. Okay, there we go. So looks like I'm receiving a single task. So I'm expecting to, I've exposed a prop called a task, which I'm expecting to be a single object. So each task is going to be, this is a component represents one task object, which had the ID, and it had the title, and it had the completed. And so I'm going to put the title in here. So that all looks pretty good. And so let's see, I'm going to need to pull these side by side so I can see them side by side. All right, I don't really need the app view up for any reason. Okay, so let's look at what we need to add here in our task list. All right, so we need to, looks like we'll probably need to import in task. So import task from, and that's task.view or just task, right? Okay, and so we're going to put a task here. I think that's capital. And that for the moment. And then we also need to, we don't need to export anything. Actually, that's not true because I'm importing task. So if I export, I need to also include that. So we'll do components. And in my components, I'll put in task. So I'm exporting that back up the chain. So that seems good. All right. So now the only thing remaining is that I have to send the task from the parent, which is task list, to the child. And the child has exposed a task. So we can do a VBind here. So V-bind. Incidentally, you might see the notation of just the semicolon, which is, or the colon, which is a shortcut for V-bind, but I'm just going to keep using it for clarity. V-bind, and we need to bind to a task, right? So we need to bind a task equal to, and then we are looping through the tasks here, so we need to give our child the task. All right. And so once that's completed, then we should have something that looks like that. All right. We're going to do more with this task list component, which is each individual task. I think at the moment what I'm also going to do is I'm going to do the strike through. So let's attack that next. So we will go to the task view, and the idea that if the task, let's look back at our app view. So in app view we have if it's completed, then this is a Boolean. So if the task is completed, it's not completed, or it is completed. So that's true or false. And so the idea is if it is completed, that there's going to be a line. Strike through should be the word none, not nano. Nano. Okay, let's fix that word. All right, so strike through if the task is completed. All right, so the way that we're going to do that is we're going to bind a class. So VBind, remember, binds attributes. We've done that here, and it also can bind a class because a class is an attribute. So we'll do a VBind, and the way that we're going to do this is a conditional bind, meaning that we're going to do, okay, VBind class. If class is equal to, or we're going to apply is completed, and then I'm going to put a colon, if a task completed. Now that is a shortcut for true. So let's see, I have a parsing error somewhere along the line. So let me see. Oh, VBind class, I think I need to finish this off with, let's see, VBind class equals, this should be in a one of those curly brace things. Okay, so let's see, I'm still getting an error because I've got a couple of things going on. This should be quote in single quotes. It's not good to talk and type at the same time. All right, so let's see what we've got there. All right, so all right, and so I'm not getting the line through that I was expecting, and that's probably because I didn't do the right thing here. All right, so now that's what I was expecting to do. So the point there was if, let's see, if we can see what we're doing here. All right, so if one of these is set to true, so let's set the top one to true. So I should get two lines that are, there we go. Or if I set one of these back to true, okay, there we go. All right, so we've got that part working now. So now we have successfully created another component, and we did a VBind using a class. So let's just make sure we're clear on that. So we did I don't think I went over that. I did a VBind on the class attribute, which was a conditional conditional VBind, and the condition was if this is true, if this is true, then apply the class. So if a task completed is true, then go ahead and put this class on it. And you can see it happening, and you should probably be able to see if we go into our inspector and we go to the class, let's see, go down to our, so for example, this one is complete, so we should actually see it being toggled on and off. So I have to go back to my app view. Oh, all these clicking, it makes it really much more difficult to prove what I'm trying to do here, sorry. So if I make this to false, F-A-L-S-E, then we should actually see, oh, it closed itself up, but we'll actually see that the class has changed. Let's see, div p tag, so we can see that the class is no longer here. And obviously it's not because we don't have the strike through anymore. So VBind then is binding attributes, whether it be ones we created in our props or whether it be ones that already exist, like, where was I? Ones that already exist, like a class, for example. And a class we're binding is complete, which is what we've defined down here, to this element only if this is true. All right, so the last piece of this puzzle, which is pretty easy in comparison to all we've done so far, is we're just going to add a method so that when we click on our to-do item, then it will go from true to false or false to true. All right, so that is in our individual task item, which is part of why we separated that out, so we can create pieces of this component we can add to this component without mucking with our main task list. So in our paragraph here then, I'm going to put some spacing. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a little input box. So input type is equal to checkbox. And so the idea is if they click on that checkbox, then we can toggle that completed as false or true. We'll toggle that back and forth. So we'll use a VOnClick. So that's how we create an event. VOnClick equals, and we're going to create a function called, or a method that's called mark complete. And so we'll come down into our object here, our default object, and we're going to export some methods. And exporting our methods is collection. It's an object of collection of methods, which makes sense. And so we need to create that method, and that method is going to be, since we've already talked about the fact that each of these components is a single instance of that task object. So it is a single instance and it is a task. So we can refer to it with this a task dot completed. So we're a single object. Let's get to, this is simply referring to myself, which is this prop right here. And then we'll say is equal to, and we'll just make it the opposite of what it was. So this a task dot completed. Completed. So whatever it was, make it the opposite. And so let's see if we can get that code up, or that browser up, and we'll see if it's working. So we have some that are already checked, and we can check them on and off, and they're in fact toggling as we would expect them to. And so again, we could probably look at our Vue code, and we could look at the objects, and we should be actually able to see them toggle between false and true. So we can see that one turn to true and false and so forth. Whew, kind of cool, right? All right, so now we've successfully changed our classes and applied an event, a click event with a function.